This is a program that's for individuals who are already located in the GTA. It's for individuals who are unemployed and looking for a job that fits their skills. This is a service that provides immediate support to job seekers that is customized to fit each unique person's needs. Of course, every job seeker has unique set of experiences, unique job goals, and unique challenges in finding employment. So it's a program that's customized for each unique person. What is offered through the program is effective job search training, one-on-one employment counseling, and a customized action plan, ongoing job search support and connections to employers until you're hired, and retention support to help you succeed in your new role. A little bit about our employers. So by connecting to ACCES, you can also connect to our employers. And those connections happen in different ways. You may have opportunities to practice your skills in mock interviews, participate in speed mentoring events, which are sort of networking events with employers. Our employers are from a variety of different sectors. And by joining ACCES, you can receive job matching and placement support through Employment Ontario. Once again, if you're located already in the GTA. Some recent events that we've had connecting our job seekers to employers. There was Career Week for Scarborough and York Region residents, where they held information sessions, workshops, and talked about hiring opportunities with regional employers. There was a virtual job fair with CIBC, where they offered current and future recruitment opportunities. The BMO Guest Speaker Series, where advice from professionals on career opportunities in the banking sector were shared with our clients. And the Peel Region Speed Mentoring event, where 120 job seekers and industry mentors came together for an afternoon of sharing and networking. But for today, we're going to talk about informational interviewing. Some key questions that we will aim to answer through this session is, what is informational interviewing and why should you use this strategy as a job seeker? What are the steps involved in informational interviewing? And what are some key questions to ask during an informational interview when you are conducting that? So this information interviewing is something that many job seekers have not heard of before, have not tried before. So let's break down what it is. It is one of the best sources for gathering information about what's happening in an occupation or an industry. It involves talking to people who are working in that particular field. And it's an interview that you as a job seeker initiate, and one where you ask the questions. And the purpose is really to network, to obtain information, whether it's information about, perhaps you are a student and you're considering your career options and you need information about that. Or perhaps you are looking to change careers and you need information about this new career path that you're considering. Or perhaps you're looking for the same occupation, but in a different industry, and you want to start making some connections and getting information about this other industry. Or perhaps you are, you haven't yet moved to Canada, or you're new to Canada and you haven't worked here before, and you want information about how your occupation or how your industry works here and what employers' expectations are. In all of those situations, informational interviewing is such a valuable tool that you can use to either make career decisions or to help you advance your job search. The purpose, again, it is to obtain information, not to reach out to people and directly ask them for a job. It's about relationship building, and that needs to be in place before any job leads would be likely to be shared. So why conduct an informational interview? They are a useful and effective exercise in really getting an insider's perspective on your field of work from someone who already works in that area. They can help you gather important information about your occupation that you can then apply back to your own job search, hopefully making your job search process more efficient. They can offer an opportunity to learn about an occupation, an industry, or an organization and its culture. It's an opportunity for you to increase your network. And there may be other benefits that you can think of that aren't on this list. Could be maybe your background is from a regulated occupation, an occupation that requires a license, and you need information about the licensing process in Canada or in Ontario. Informational interviews work best if you are reaching out to more than one person, because of course, if you connect with one person, then you're getting that one person's perspective on everything. And that person's perspective is, very heavily influenced by their own experiences with that type of work. And different people may have different experiences or different a different understanding of the employer's expectations or what job search strategies are effective. So in general, the nature of networking is that it is most effective the more people that you are trying to build relationships with. So we'll talk about some steps in conducting an information interview. So firstly, identify the occupation or industry which you are hoping to learn about. That's a pretty easy step if you are an experienced professional and you're looking for a job in your field. It can be more challenging if you are a student, for example, and you're considering career options for future studies. But this is a good way to make some informed decisions about your career path. Prepare for the interview. Identify people to interview, and that can certainly be something that is challenging. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Arrange the interview, conduct the interview, and follow up. So let's talk a little bit more about each of those steps individually. So again, in terms of identifying the occupation or the industry, this is a critical step for individuals who are exploring different careers. Again, students, whether it's high school students, university students, but also people who are maybe considering a career change. Assess your own interests, your abilities, your values, your skills, as well as labor market conditions and trends to identify the best fields to research and to try to make connections with people from that background. And you can use the link there, the job bank website, jobbank.gc.ca, and you can look at the trend analysis tab to get information about labor market research. This is useful for everyone, not just for people who haven't decided on a career path, but even for people who are haven't yet arrived in Canada and you're starting to explore job search from wherever it is that you're currently living. It's helpful to have a sense in Canada, in Ontario, even more specifically in the certain city that you're hoping to come to. What are the labor market prospects for the type of job that you're looking for? What are the requirements in terms of education? Is it a regulated occupation? So you can use this tool as well. In terms of preparing to conduct the interview, what you want to do is really gather all of the information that you can about that occupation prior to the interview. You don't want to ask obvious questions that you could just easily research and get the answers to, so that you can, if you ask more informed questions, it will help you to market yourself, and it will also help you to access information that you might not be able to otherwise access. So once you've done that research, identify what information you're lacking. And it could be, again, it could be more of a, detailed explanation about the licensing process if you're looking for work in a regulated occupation. It could be, information about how employers tend to recruit in this particular field. Do they use a certain website? Do they tend to recruit via their own website and their own system? Do they use private recruiters, private placement agencies, or do they specifically not use those agencies? Are there certain credentials that are not negotiable, that you absolutely must have for any position in this field? So generate a master list of questions that you would like to talk to someone about and get the answers to. And the questions that you ask from that master list might depend on who you're conducting the interview with, because different people might not have access to all of the answers to all of your questions. So you can narrow down that master list of questions to kind of fit with the individual that you are talking to. So to identify people to interview, it's best if you can start with a list of people that you already know in your chosen occupation or industry. Could be friends, relatives, fellow students, current or former coworkers, supervisors, neighbors, or just people that you know from some other source. You can also think of reaching out to those people. Let's say you don't know anybody who fits with your occupational background. Then you can reach out to these people that you do know and ask them if they know anyone who is working in that particular occupation, so that you get a warm introduction to that person. But you can also reach out to new people, and you can do that in so many different ways. LinkedIn being an amazing tool to use in that way. You don't have to reach out to someone who lives anywhere near you. LinkedIn is worldwide, so you can connect with people from across the globe and try to build these connections. You can also use professional organizations, organizational directories, public speakers, any and all of those. So next step is to, once you've identified that list of people that you want to connect with, to request and arrange the interview. So you want to contact that person to set up that interview with them. And you can contact them in whatever method is available to you that you're comfortable with. It could be over the phone, it could be via email, you could send a LinkedIn message, or by having someone, a mutual contact, make an introduction on your behalf. I do think that, you may be more likely to get a response if you do have access to that person's phone number. But any of those other strategies you can use as well. Email, LinkedIn, you will just need to be strategic about what you say to kind of encourage that person to respond back to you. So some do's and don'ts in terms of making the request. So do talk a little bit about who you are and why you're reaching out. Be specific and direct. Mention how you know the person. So if this is someone that you are reaching out to because you have a mutual contact, then mention that. Mention how you know them or how you're connected to them. If it's someone, let's say you joined a LinkedIn group and you had some interaction with this person within that LinkedIn group, then reference that in your request. And point out anything that you have in common, because that's going to increase the likelihood that they would reply back to you. It could be that you are alumni from the same university, for example, or it could be that you are a newcomer to Canada, or you are looking at immigrating to Canada, and you can see that that is something that this person has done, and they have successfully integrated into the job market. So point out things that you have in common, because again, it will increase the chances that they reply back to you. So don't ask for a job. Again, with the nature of networking or information interviewing, it's about relationship building. And for anyone to be in a position to offer a job lead to someone, they need to have trust in that person. They need to know that person well enough that they're comfortable to refer them for that opportunity. So focus more on that relationship building, on accessing the career related information that you need, and sharing information about yourself with this person. Don't take up too much time. So for example, in your request, if you ask for a certain amount of time to have a phone conversation or a Zoom meeting with the person, then honor that, and don't take up more time than what you have requested. Avoid asking questions that are too personal, like, for example, what's your salary that you earn at this company? That's not typically something that a person would be comfortable sharing. However, you could ask, what's the typical range for this occupation for someone, at their sort of mid-level career. So you could ask it in a more general way, if that's something that you do want to know about. And also avoid asking questions that you could easily find the answers to with a little research. So here is an example of a request. Hello, Ms. Michael. I'm a student studying environmental engineering at the University of Toronto. I saw your profile in the alumni database and found your career path and work at the City of Toronto to be very interesting. I would like to know if we can schedule a 15-minute informational interview in the next few weeks, as I would like to get some advice on potential career paths in the environmental engineering field. Please let me know if you have the bandwidth now, or if we should connect in the future once your schedule opens up. I look forward to hearing back from you. So here you can see that this person has sent a relatively brief request, but they have managed to point out something that they have in common. So obviously they're both alumni of the University of Toronto in the environmental engineering program. This person has also been very specific about what they're hoping to achieve here, in the sense that they're requesting a very specific time frame for this interview, and they're being specific about what it is that they're hoping to gain, advice on potential career paths. So this is a good example of how you might set up that request. Let's look at another sample. Hi, James. I'm Rohan, and I'm a software engineer with over 3 years experience. I found your profile after reading a post you wrote on LinkedIn about predicting customer churn. I found the article fascinating, and I've actually started implementing a similar model myself. I appreciate your detailed perspective. I'm reaching out because I've been thinking about a career change into data science. If it's okay with you, I'd love to ask you 3 to 5 questions about your experience and your insights on the data science industry. Any chance you'd be available for a quick call this Thursday at 11 a.m.? I'm flexible, so if any other day or time works better for you, please do let me know. Thanks, and I look forward to your reply, Rohan. So again, sort of fitting into those guidelines for a request. there's a brief introduction that this person has done, sharing a little bit about their experience, and also pointing out how they located this person to reach out to through LinkedIn and through a post that the person wrote, and even specifically mentioning what that post was and giving some positive feedback on that. Also pointing out why they're wanting to contact this person. So it looks like Rohan is considering a career change, and he's been very specific that he has 3 to 5 questions to ask James. So again, being specific about the amount of time that it would take. This person is also proposing a very specific date and time, which can be helpful. Trying to pinpoint a date rather than be very ambiguous about when you want to meet can be helpful. But he's also pointed out that he's got flexibility and he's open to other times. So another good sort of example of how you might set up your request. The 2 requests are quite different. The first one was a student who is looking at some career decision making. This person is also looking at career decision making, but he's someone who already has experience. So 2 good samples there. In terms of conducting the interview, so some rules to follow. You want to dress appropriately, meaning dress professionally. Dress as you would perhaps if you were working in this particular occupation. You want to have that professional appearance about you. Of course, arrive on time. Be polite. Be professional. Arrive on time, whether it's an in-person meeting, call on time if it's a phone call, join the Zoom meeting or start the Zoom meeting if that's how you are conducting the interview. Do that all regardless of how you are planning on having this conversation. It's important to be on time. Refer to your list of prepared questions to stay on track, but also allow for spontaneous discussion. You still want to be respectful of the person's time. So, if you have a list of prepared questions and you've requested, 20 minutes of their time, then make sure that you're sticking to that, even if there is spontaneous discussion that's going on. If the information interview is going really well and it is extending beyond the amount of time that you had requested, then I think it would be important to acknowledge that and to mention to the person, I know we had arranged for a 20-minute meeting and, the 20 minutes is up. Do you have time to continue the discussion? So that you're being polite and professional about taking up this other person's time. Before leaving, and in particular, if the person has been really helpful to you and really forthcoming with information, you could ask the person to suggest other people that you might be able to reach out to who could be helpful to you, and ask permission to use this person's name to connect with their contacts. You will probably have a sense of whether or not that's something that the person would be willing to do toward the end of the meeting. So you can kind of use your judgment and make that decision in that moment. But it can be a helpful way of, again, the nature of networking is not just to connect with one person, but to connect with multiple people. So that's what I would suggest. After the interview, it's important to follow up. So follow up immediately following the interview. In fact, after the interview, or even sometimes during the interview, depending on how it's being conducted, write some notes on what you learned. Write some notes about information that you got from this person that is really valuable to you. If necessary, adjust your job search, your resume, or your career objectives based on the information that you got from the person. And send a thank you to this person who you've held this informational interview with within a couple of days of your meeting. And you can reference those, things that you had written down that were helpful to you. And then if you're not already connected with this person on LinkedIn, then do send a LinkedIn request and try to maintain some level of interaction with this person on LinkedIn. So we'll talk a little bit about some questions that you may want to ask. So it could be things like, can you describe a typical day at work? And that might be something that's more relevant for someone who is either considering a career change or someone that has not yet decided on their career path. You could ask the person, how did you get started in this field? There are often so many different paths that might lead someone to a particular career. It's not always a straightforward line from point A to point B to every single career. So it can be helpful to know what led this person to, to where they are at this point in time. What level of education is required to work in this field? Are there any additional certifications that are required? It could include things like, is this an occupation that's licensed in Ontario if you haven't been able to access that information? What do you find most satisfying about your job? And what do you find least satisfying? And that's a question I would say, again, that's of huge importance to someone who is either considering to change careers or to younger people, high school students, or university students who are deciding on their career path, to get some insight into the realities of working in that particular field. What other positions could one consider with the same background? So what are alternative opportunities within this same career? Whether it's in the same field, in the same organization, what other positions are out there? And that's important, I think even for people who are going to be immigrating to Canada, or for people who haven't worked in Canada yet, or even for just new job seekers in general. Oftentimes, employers will use different job titles than each other, but those different job titles represent roles that have the same job description. So it's really helpful as a job seeker, when you go to Indeed or when you go to LinkedIn and you're typing in job titles, to know exactly what job titles to be typing in. What do employers refer to this particular role as when they recruit? What differentiates your organization from your competitors? So this would be useful to know if you are, reaching out to someone who works for a particular company, because you're interested in also exploring opportunities within that company. I think I mentioned this before, but can you provide me with some information about the licensing process? So that is, of course, for those people who are searching for opportunities in a regulated occupation. What skills and talents are most essential to you in your job? How can I evaluate whether or not I have the necessary skills? Sometimes when people are looking for job opportunities, they're reading through job postings, they might look at those postings and think, well, I have, 80% of what's mentioned here, but they're uncertain of that 20% of items that I don't have. How essential are those things to be able to not only, be considered for this job opportunity, but also to successfully, do this type of work. So you can ask questions like that. How would you describe the working environment of your organization? So again, if you are looking to explore work at a particular company, that's a relevant question. But you could also more generally ask, can you tell me a little bit about the work environment or the workplace culture within this field or within this industry, to get a sense of that, if you're not trying to be so specific to just one company. What is the current demand for individuals in your position? What do you think future job prospects will be like? And I think that's important for all job seekers, really, to have a sense of what the demand is for their occupation, because it can influence what it is that you're looking for. Certainly, it's helpful for students, for people who are considering career change, to have a sense of what the demand is for the occupation that they're considering. It doesn't really make sense to make a career decision toward a particular occupation that is where there's no job opportunities. So that's why that's important. Also, that's why it's important to reach out to multiple people, because you might get different perspectives from different people in regards to the answer to this question. What is the average salary for individuals in this occupation? I would avoid saying in your position, because that might be a little bit too close to asking that personal information about how much the other person makes. But what's the average salary for individuals in this field? What's the average salary for an entry-level position in this field, if that's what you're aiming for, or a mid-level position? Because that can help you definitely through the interview process to have a sense of that. What are the personal qualities you feel will help an individual succeed in your position? These might be things that you see coming up in job postings, but you might get some additional insight that either affirms that you are very much on the right track, or affirms that this is either the right career for you if you're sort of at that stage where you're making those types of decisions, or if there might be other options that are a little bit of a closer fit for you. I think we already talked about this, but what are the typical entry-level job titles and functions? What entry-level jobs are best for learning as much as possible? And that's a great question too for anybody who is at that stage of their career. Because if you have an idea in your mind of sort of where you want to end up, then I think it's really helpful to connect with people and sort of find out what's the most efficient way to get there. What entry-level jobs would really help me to be set on that path? What professional publications, journals, or organizations might help me learn more about this field? That can be incredibly useful because it can also allow you to tap into things like that on LinkedIn, for example. If you're a LinkedIn user, it could allow you to just make connections yourself with other people. If there are other professional associations, and you could even ask this person if they are a LinkedIn user, are there any LinkedIn groups that you're aware of that are occupationally specific that might help me? And then finally, if it's appropriate, meaning if the meeting has been going really well, and if you're sort of feeling that the person is helpful and willing to continue to offer you help and support, then you could ask if they would mind taking a look at your resume and offering some suggestions or advice. Keep in mind that when you reach out to professionals in your field, they are likely to be experts in that occupation, but they may not be job search experts. So to really get the most sort of accurate assessment of your resume, in the sense that how to target it to make sure that you're incorporating keywords so that it passes through ATS systems, how to, set up your resume, what different sections need to be represented, what do employers expect to see in each of those different categories. That's where you can use the resources offered by ACCES, because we at ACCES are job search experts. So the aim for networking and for information interviewing is to get to connect with an expert, an occupational expert. But the combination of making those types of connections and utilizing ACCES as your job search expert is quite helpful. So I hope this session has been helpful. I hope that you have learned something new about information interviewing. Perhaps just the whole concept of information interviewing is new to you, or maybe it's something that you've been aware of that you haven't yet tried, or maybe you've tried and you've either had success with it or you haven't. And I would encourage you as a sort of a next step to consider attempting to utilize this strategy in your search. I think it's important to remember and to point out that there is no job search strategy that has a 100% success rate, whether it's applying online, doing information interviews, doing cold calling, any strategy isn't going to be 100% successful, but they all have that, that percentage of time that it works. And so every job search strategy that you have at your disposal, you should continue utilizing, even if sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you're, using the wrong strategy. It doesn't mean that informational interviewing doesn't work if you try it a few times and you don't find that you're getting momentum. So I really would encourage you to persist with it. I think that oftentimes people tend to have less resilience when it comes to using these types of strategies. Anything that kind of falls under the networking category, people tend to get quite discouraged quickly if they don't get results. But it takes time, and it's worth it if you keep persisting with it. So I'd really encourage you to do that. So I am just going to share this last slide here, and then we'll go through and I'll answer some of your questions. But if anybody is located in the GTA, I just wanted to share some of our locations. Actually, so our 7 locations are there. The contact information is there. You can also find all of this information on our website. So you can find it after the session as well. So I will go through LinkedIn requests an annual fee to access any leads, which can be a wall for those with limited financial resources. Can you tell us what can be done about it? I'm not sure what you mean by leads. If you have the free LinkedIn account, which I think is enough to start to make connections with people, then I don't think you need the paid account. You just might need to use a different strategy to reach out. So if you're trying to make connections with new people, there may be some people who have limited the access that other people have to their account. So there may be people that you can't connect with that way, but it's not based on you having a free account. It's based on them having that as a setting within their own account. Join groups, join LinkedIn groups that relate to your occupation. Or for example, alumni, if you have an alumni group from your college or your university, join groups like that and try to generate interactions with people within those groups, because then you're in a good position to request to connect with them. You'll be, your name will be familiar to that person if you reach out in a timely manner. So that's what I would suggest. Just being active, looking at your existing contacts and then looking at their contacts. Is there anybody that you're already connected to that has contacts that would be of value for you to reach out to, and then ask for an introduction to that person. Okay, so next question. This is a great question too. What tools and suggestions can you give to maintaining a relationship once a connection is made via an informational interview? How often do I need to contact that connection? That's a great question, because networking is not just one interaction, is it? And oftentimes it's easier to think about how to initially reach out to that person rather than how to kind of continue to engage them and connect with them on an ongoing basis. I think that that's where LinkedIn is incredibly useful, because you can just interact with them regularly through commenting on things that they post, or by sharing things directly with that person that you think they would find interesting, things that relate to perhaps something that you talked about when you were conducting that informational interview. It could be a future trend in the career that you've talked about, and then you see a news article that relates to that affirms what they said, so then you send them that information. So it is something that it's an investment of your time to be, trying to continually engage the person. But I do think that using LinkedIn makes it much more manageable. And it's a way that you can, foster connections with, your entire network at once. So it's not requiring you to, let's say you have done 10 informational interviews and you're not having to send regular emails to 10 different people. You just, engage with them on LinkedIn, comment on things that they post. Hopefully they will comment on things that you post. So that's the strategy there. We still do have a little bit of time, so if anybody has other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. There is one question that I think relates more to interviewing. So I would suggest that you take part in the interviewing webinar. And I think that Keisha is going to talk a little bit about upcoming webinars. I'm not sure if one of them that she's going to feature is interviewing, but definitely at least once or twice a month, ACCESS does host an interviewing webinar. So not informational interviewing, but preparing for a job interview.